afternoon, everyone. This is Sandra Christensen, again, coming to you live on the Voice of the People live stream. Today, I have a very special guest. It's my friend Ian Faith, and he is with AI Agentic Consultant Global Creative Group. And we are going to be talking everything AI, including a new friend called Liddy today. So welcome, Ian.
Sandra, thank you so much for having me on the show. And it's going to be fun to talk about AI and especially its practical uses today. So yeah, thanks for the invite.
Absolutely. And so we met very recently. We are both involved in what's called a precinct. We are both precinct committeemen in the Republican Party.
Yep.
Can you tell me a little bit about how you got started in the AI industry?
Yeah, I've always been in the business and marketing world. And part of that job is you're always looking for optimization of processes. And so many, many years ago, I had a very good friend, Lawrence Senior, who is my partner now in this, who started talking about AI. And he didn't just talk about it a little, he talked about it all the time, even to the point of he took on the mega geek moniker, and he owns it well. But he's been a brilliant source of information that you could have paid tens of thousands of dollars to get, basically consulting on what AI is, what it's doing, where it's coming from, where it's going. And we started dabbling going back 3.5 years when it was in its very rudimentary form. He was the first person to even show me OpenAI.
Wow.
Talking to me about what it's doing, what was coming. And today, it almost seems like a relic of the AI industry rather than a front runner at this point, which is kind of funny. And we are in rabbit holes that you will never believe. But it all comes down to optimizing, augmenting processes. There's a lot of people out there who are scared that AI is going to take their job. But I think the way you should look at it, look at all AI tools as power tools. They're things that help you do jobs better.
Exactly. And I'm not sure if you know, but I do have a IT background from a million years ago. I graduated from college in 1994, and I came to Arizona to be an IT project manager for Honeywell. Now, back in the day, it was COBOL programming. I don't even know if you know what COBOL programming is, but it was a very wordy language. And I was kind of at that cutting edge. Wasn't vacuum tubes, but it was a long time ago in information technology. But what I've learned is that there's a lot of fear. Being a project manager in that realm, we had this fear of the year 2000. Do you remember that?
Oh,
it
100%.
The world was going to end, and everybody, there was going to be mass chaos. And I was on one of the leadership teams to do that rollout for the year 2000. And it was so interesting because back then we didn't have the foresight to understand that we're in 1990, and pretty soon we can't use just 96 anymore. We have to have 4 digits. And so that was the fear back then. So I think my point is that we fear the unknown. But as you mentioned, these are tools. These are tools that we use to be more productive. With that, there does need to be some guardrails with that because, as you know, I'm on a school board. And while we have these tools meant for adults, kids are using them too. And there can be a dark side to things. And again, I want to make it very clear. Tools are not inherently good or evil. They are tools, but people could use tools for any agenda. What do you think about that?
Yeah, so my son's in the Paradise Valley school system, and his school, I won't name it to shame him, but they've basically given up on homework because they think, and they know the kids will all use AI to do their homework for them. One thing I told my son is, make sure you're smart enough to understand what's going on, but if you don't use AI, you're kind of a fool because it is the future. And you need to understand how to use it now. And I'm glad I did that because he's now at the point where he's actually designing tools himself on his phone.
Amazing.
Yeah, no, and they're really sophisticated, and it's amazing what this piece of technology in one's hand can do. And he's showing me that even though schools failing them in that aspect of it and just almost dismissing AI as something that's making his experience worse, he's using it to get to be leaps and bounds ahead of everybody else, because he's actually dived headfirst into it.
Well, I will correct you for one thing. Being on the governing board in that same district, what I will say is that we are making attempts to embrace AI because it's here to stay. And
Great.
we want our students and children to be prepared for what comes next. We are in a different realm right now, and we are experiencing lots of changes in technology, lots of changes in geopolitical areas, in education, all of the above. And so what I will say is what I've been told as a governing board member in a board meeting, that we are using AIs, but with guardrails. And that's where I take pause, because I feel, having used tools, I don't feel there are strong guardrails for children. What are your thoughts on that?
No, well, just to agree with you in there about, it's great to hear that they are doing something. And I'm just, talking from my own experience with him within that school. And I, admittedly, like a lot of parents out there, not heavily involved in the school, you trust that there'll be people guiding your children well through their education, and we monitor it through his grades. But I monitor it beyond his grades. I monitor it based on his knowledge base, his level of intellect, his level of common sense, his problem solving skills, and then his use of technology. So I want to see that he's not addicted to Instagram or TikTok, but I also want to know that he knows how to use tools well.
It sounds like
his phone well when he needs it.
You're doing a great job parenting. And that's one of the things that I've discovered on being on a school board, being a mom who has a child that just, a grown man now, he just recently graduated a couple of years ago. He's 19 now. But parents and teachers have to partner in this venture. We can't be blaming one another. We have to partner in order for the students to thrive and do well and be safe. Wouldn't you agree?
No, 100%. Yeah, no, 100%. Because look, one of the guardrails around AI, especially when it comes to the generative AI and the use of fake photos. Mm-hmm. I was in a legal conference in 2021 where they were talking about the ability of deep fakes, not just within, no, actually this was 2020, it's even before the 2020 election, deep fakes within photographs and videos, and how they would probably be used in the 2020 election. We didn't see a lot of that, but I guarantee coming up, we're going to see more and more of them being used, because that technology has got so good. It's really hard to know the difference.
Yes. Well, speaking of that, you mentioned 2020 election. So I'm going to shift gears a bit, and I would like to pick your brain a bit about why you started this venture for AI in politics. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So I grew up in a family that was really mixed in England. I had a mother who was very conservative, a big Margaret Thatcher fan, and I became a big Margaret Thatcher fan. And then my father, whose father was actually a communist of all people. And I really followed the conservative side because I was always a big meritocracy person. You get what you earn in life, but you also, through my faith in Jesus Christ, you steward those things well. And you are charitable, you are giving, you give of your money, you give of your time, you give of your resources in a charitable way. And I didn't feel that the government should come in and take it from me. So I got heavily involved in politics from an early age. While I was in America, I became a citizen in 2000. And I've pretty much worked campaigns since about 2008. And obviously more and more in the last 12 years, where I probably put up between 2016 and today, hundreds of signs on the side of the road and in people's yards and knocked on doors. I'm a precinct captain here in Justine, and I'm the only one who's actually a precinct committeeman here, so I actually go and knock on every door.
That's wonderful. I love knocking on doors because it's unscripted, it's real, and you really get the heart of the people because
You do.
that's what being an elected representative, in your case, an elected precinct committeeman, and an elected official, me being on a school board and then running for District 4 State House of Representative, because we cannot serve the people if we don't actually talk to the people. Wouldn't you
Right.
agree? Well, one of the things that I really liked about meeting you and talking to you is having that common goal of just wanting to set the bar high for people and to make things better. Unlike you, I should say, grew up in a very apolitical family. I grew up in New Mexico, so typically people from New Mexico, especially if they're Hispanic like myself, they vote Democrat. So I didn't know anything about politics growing up. All I knew was that my dad wanted me to vote, and he wanted me to vote Democrat. And we had a lever back in the day in New Mexico. We just had to set what we wanted, and we pulled the lever, and it just voted Democrat down the line. Although I'm a bit of a divergent, so I voted for Ross Perot, and my father, the first time I got a chance to vote, and my father was very upset with me because he even said the man of the house should get all the votes. And I'm like, whoa, Dad, I'm pretty sure there's an amendment that had, I think it was the 14th that gave the women the right to vote. So I thought that was pretty funny.
Sandra, we have a question coming in from the YouTube Live. You mind if we
Great.
ask it real quick? It is just, how can the government leverage AI to make the government better for the people?
So I think I'm going to defer that one to you. The question is, how can the government leverage AI in order to make things better for the people? What are your thoughts on that, Ian?
How long have we got? Because I mean, this could be a 10-hour show. No, great question from whoever phoned that in, because the government should be the first and foremost people using AI. They could use it for workflow optimization in especially the repetitive tasks that we know go on within government. It could also be used within bills to actually give a public-facing portal to every bill in front of Congress. Remember, I think it was Nancy Pelosi who shoved a bill on the table that was this big.
Nobody read it.
And we knew that they were voting on it. And she said, we need to vote for the bill before we know what's in the bill.
To find out what, yes, that's
Yeah, right. And that's absolutely absurd. But if we had an AI tool, it could be this big or this big. You could ask questions of that bill, get information about really intricate parts of it that would take you a couple of lawyers to figure out what it meant in minutes. So transparency if the government really cared about the people, it would put something like that in straight away. So we could understand who are the sponsors, who are the senators, or who are the House members who are voting for these different bills. We could then do a look back on using an AI tool of saying, okay, give me Thomas Massey's voting record. And you could see everyone Thomas Massey's voted for, or even Lindsey Graham, right? And then where does Lindsey Graham stand on a particular issue, or where does Chuck Schumer stand on a particular issues? And these could be things to help people become more engaged in politics. Like you said before, Sandra, all politics is supposed to be local. And we've created such a distance with it, even with our own representatives, that it's no longer there. But AI can actually close that gap and put us at a position where we can actually reach right inside to the inner operations of state houses and county houses and federal offices. And as people understand how things are, I could go through a myriad of departments. Like I drive around Phoenix, and it's stunning to me that we do not have AI controlled traffic lights at this point.
Yeah.
To sit at a traffic light and wait for 5 minutes with your car running and there's nobody coming the other way is ridiculous. All of that sort of stuff could be controlled with AI.
Saying. So as I mentioned, I came from private industry. So I've worked in Fortune 100 companies and everything to startups, everything in between. My dad was a grocery store owner, so my heart is for small business. But I've done 2 stints now with the federal government federal and state. So when I was in college, the first time I got a chance to do an internship away from New Mexico, I worked in Washington, D.C. I worked for the Federal Aviation Administration right on the mall. It was amazing. I'd never been outside of New Mexico other than border states, California, Texas. And so it was a great opportunity for me as a young 20-something to experience our nation's capital. But what I found was I was working as a low-end tech person in their IT department, and I found that their systems were just slow and archaic. Now, this was back in the 1990s. And so fast forward to a couple years ago, I went back to government for a short time to work for the Arizona Department of Education. Now, I'm not going to disparage anybody that works for government, but what I will say, those of us that have worked in private industry that move very quickly, that set the bar high and expect high outputs, it's very difficult to work in an environment where there's a lot of bureaucracy and a lot of red tape per se. And so I can see a lot of places where AI and some of the things that you're mentioning could be a great resource and help for government jobs. Some of the things that are very repetitive, we can outsource that, right? And so I agree with you. Yeah.
Yeah, we could have got rid of all of that corruption in Minnesota, having AI tools, understanding who was asking for the loans, whether there was too many loans being asked for by the same people, whether there was connections between the same people, were the people who were getting these things legal. I mean, a myriad of information. And the classic, the Leering Center with the N missing out of it, right? Those things could have been flagged by an AI tool instantly.
Exactly.
But like Dan Bongino's show says all the time, that what's the adage in politics with technology? Yesterday's technology, tomorrow. And
Yes.
and that's how ridiculous it is. But I would say this: if it's good enough for the military, it should be good enough for the populace.
Amen
And the
to
military
that.
is using the most future-facing state-of-the-art AI technology. That should be across government. And it makes one suspicious of our government if they're willing to use it to fight others and surveil us, but they're not willing to use it to give us insights into what they're doing.
We have another question coming in from the YouTube
Great.
Live as well. This one kind of on this topic already. How do you envision our government regulating the AI industry moving forward, kind of staying on the same topic?
So the question is, how do we envision the government regulating AI tools going forward? So I'm going to take the first part of that and then I'll let you finish that. So I've been doing a lot of research on this matter. So in schools, because that's one of my areas of expertise, we have to protect children. When we send our kids to school, we expect 2 things: that they learn to read, write, do math, think critically, but we also expect for them to be protected. We talked a little bit about deep fakes. There are tools, because I've been in trainings for governing board members where you can, I can't remember the name of the tool, but you can basically take off anybody's clothes as long as you have their face and then send it out to...
And shame someone, right?
Yes. Yeah. And so we cannot allow these types of apps in our schools. And I don't know how to get a handle on that, because it goes back to our district saying we are going to be using AI with guardrails. And so they talk about the wonderful tools that they use, like Khan Academy and things of that nature, but it goes further. So in terms of legislation, we have to do things to protect children. Another area that I see is, again, as you mentioned, deep fakes. So I am a candidate for Legislative District 4 State House. If an opponent, say a Democratic opponent, came and wanted to pretend that I said something that I didn't or had a video of me that was a deep fake, we need to be able to, as elected officials and just an everyday public, be able to have some recourse on protections for personal information. I'll let you take.
Yeah.
I'll let
So
you take that.
you mentioned it with the ethics side of things, and it comes down to a morality question as well. What are we teaching our kids that would want to do an undress of someone, send it out, whether it's a teacher, and shame someone? That's multi-layered. I see. I lean libertarian in some ways, where I would love to see basically punishment back up crime. I think we're in an era where punishment doesn't back up crime. I would be more open to let every tool be available, but people have a clear understanding. If you use this to break the law, you will be punished to the full
There are
extent.
consequences for your actions.
Yeah.
We have free will, and we are protected by a lot of different types of privileges, liberties, our First Amendment rights, etc. But there are consequences when you
There should be.
play
but
stupid
you
games,
look at it with
get stupid prices.
Essentially, you look at it with the way government is the more control we cede to our government, the more we basically are beholden to them. They should be beholden to us,
100%.
not us be beholden to them. So yeah, I find it hard in that way. And to answer the question from the person who asked that question, I think you've got to be really careful about giving government too much power to regulate. I think we saw it through the Patriot Act, and it wasn't a good idea. We saw what happened during COVID with the big hand of the government involved in things, and the reality is with what's gonna you haven't seen the start of AI yet. We are in such the infancy part of it. It's going to blow people's minds what it's capable of, and it will really challenge everyone with these questions of like, how much power do we let state, local authorities have? What punishments should be ascribed to certain crimes? And hopefully it will be a reworking of society where, one, it will free up more of our time to spend with our children and teach our children well about ethics and morality and pain, and just being good citizens.
Yes.
and good friends to each other. Love thy neighbor, basically.
Exactly. I couldn't agree with you more. Well, I'm going to switch gears once again and ask you about a tool that you helped launch called Liddy. Tell us how to spell it and what it's all about.
Yeah, so we ventured into AI for politics because on the Democratic side of the House, they're very good at utilizing technology. They were always ahead of the GOP. We joked in the pre-show about the GOP need to change the O from something like old to something else. So if anyone listening out there has any other ideas, let's throw them in there. But like, we wanted to make sure that there's a massive amount of information out there. So as a precinct captain, if I knock on a door or I'm talking to someone, I want to use this tool. It's not something I use every minute of the day. But in the instance where I'm challenged with, tell me about Proposition 202, and I say, well, I haven't really read up on it, can I get back to you? You've lost the opportunity. With Liddy, we can reach in and go into those propositions and tell the person asking exactly the answers. As a precinct captain, you'll get to understand how I can serve my local community, how I can serve the legislative district, who's running in LD4, who can I vote for? Like I've had people in years gone by saying, oh, I love this candidate, I'm going to vote for them. And I've said, I don't think you can. I think you're in another part of town.
Yeah.
And they didn't even know that. So
Yeah.
It's a case of Liddy is there. It's basically an intelligence agent. It brings together data from a myriad of sources that's curated through our LD. It isn't ChatGPT. So you're not going to get on there and get general information. You're going to get curated information that's useful within the political scope of what we're doing in the primaries, and then with the midterms that's coming up, and then in 2 years' time with the general election. And it's a super powerful tool. I often say to people, it's like having an amazing drill. You don't walk around the house drilling holes in walls, but when you need to do it, you want something to do a job really well. This is a tool that can be accessed on the phone with a password, so it's only there for LD4 members at the moment. We're going to roll it out to other LDs coming up, but it will give you the ability to get the information you want quickly to make decisions. independents and Republicans like to vote based on good information.
Yes.
Is this going to raise my property taxes? Is this going to change how my kids operate at school? Who are school board members? I think we all remember in the last election, we had a thing this long of 50 judges. And everyone was just, I'm not just going to vote for any of them because I don't know who they are. Yeah. You'll be able to have this answered in instant. And then what we're also going to look at doing is once Liddy's out there, it should all tie into one central tool that will be voter facing. So you can share it with your friends and they can like ping it with questions about different candidates, different propositions.
So I'm going to interject for just one moment because at the beginning you said something very important. This is not ChatGPT. It's not Grok. It's not Claude. So can you tell, and I will argue that any tool, the output is only as good as the input. So can you tell us where this data is coming from? For how is Liddy fed? And explain that a little more for our viewers, because a lot of
people, that's a great
AI
question.
Is very new to a lot of people.
Yeah, like so we don't just scrape websites. We pull in and structure data. So we initially reached out to all the candidates, everyone from school board to county commissioner, up through people running for governor, and asked them to return a survey with positions on different on how they stood on the border, how they stood on schools, how they stood on crime. And so we had actual information from those actual candidates who were running. Then what we also did is work with the LD4 board and said to them, what is important, what needs to be known, because this serves two purposes. One, for elections, and two, as a precinct captain. So how can you have a healthier precinct? What can you do to get involved? How can you go out there and put up signs? How can you get yard signs? How can I when an event's coming up to get trained? All this information's captured in there. And we now have a wonderful young lady, Emily, has stepped up and she in the back end is curating all this new information for us. So we're packing it with information. But of course, there's always going to be people who say, well, I want to know about this fringe topic in there. And it's not for fringe topics. It's for general important information to use for the upcoming primaries, again, upcoming midterms, and then the general in a couple of years. So it's the information is very specific, but if you have a question that we hear constantly being asked on the tool and there's no answer for it, eventually what Emily's going to do and we're going to do is say, okay, this gets asked a lot. What is the right answer? Not an opinion, but a factual answer. And then we'll add it in. So then we'll get all of those things updated and the tool will just continually build on itself.
So you indicated that candidates fill out information on their own. What happens if a candidate does not fill out that information?
Yeah, and we had a few of that, and it was kind of disappointing. But to any of the candidates listening out there who didn't fill it out, we're here to help support you in your run. And all we asked for was something that you could have took you 30 minutes to actually fill out and return to us. So we decided that if there's no information in there, we are going to take the information that we think is pertinent and add it into the tool. We'll get it from their website or from press releases or interviews they have done. And if they're not happy about the information that's in there, you've had every chance to fill out the information. So at the end of the day, I would say to all these people, when you're running a campaign in 2026 onwards, you have to have together a QA that you're going to start giving to different organizations so they can understand where you stand on positions. Because this isn't something that's like a bump in the road. This is the future. And yes, it isn't going to change. And what you'll see as we go forward is this will become a richer and richer and richer experience where people will become more engaged in politics because of the effect it will have on their day-to-day lives.
Final question. What advice would you give to me to do more research on not necessarily Liddy, but AI tools in general? There is a new committee in the legislature. It is an AI committee, and I believe Justin Wilmoth is the chair of that, if I'm remembering correctly. Regardless, I would love to be on that type of committee when I get elected to the House. what advice would you give me as an elected official to still have my pulse on what the people want, but also to prepare myself for something brand new like this?
Yeah, so what we're doing now is a podcast. Podcasts are no longer just a tactic, they're infrastructure. And you see up here, Agents of Disruption is a podcast I do with Lauren. We cover AI topics. It isn't as busy as we want it to be. We're going to be doing more of them coming up as AI expands. But yeah, there's a ton of podcasts out there where you should go and learn. Put your headphones on, go for a walk, listen to a podcast. And you'll start hearing terms that will become more and more familiar. Then you'll understand the practical application of these things. And it'll absolutely blow your mind, the technology that's out there and the ability to use these tools in your business, in your home life. They're time savers to the max. But yeah, podcasts.
Okay. How can we find your podcast? But mine is actually a live stream, which is, I will argue, is a little more difficult than a podcast because we take sometimes questions live from people. But
Right.
Tell us how we can find your information and what would you like our viewers to know about you?
Yeah, so just go to Spotify, Apple, iHeart, any of the major podcast outlets and look for Agents of Disruption. You'll find us in there, and we cover all AI topics. And on the web, you can go to globalcreativegroup.com and find out more about what we do with AI there. But Sandra, thank you so much for having me join you today.
Well, thank you for being on, and I appreciate you, and I'm looking forward to this new adventure that we're on with AI in politics. So I would like to thank my guest, Ian Faith, today. We've had great conversations. We are just starting to dip our toe into the realm of AI in politics, but I would encourage you to look up his podcast, Agents of Disruption, and just do all you can to find out more. Again, this is not something to fear. I know I grew up in the 80s and 70s, and I've seen all the iRobots and those scary movies of the end of the world with robots and technology, but this is something to embrace. It's not going away. We just need to arm ourselves with truth and information. And so I just want to thank Ian today. And this is Sandra Christensen. I am the voice of the people. If you would like to be a guest on my live stream, please reach out to me at sandraforaz.com or tune in live on Tuesdays and Thursdays on Facebook and X and YouTube. This is Sandra Christensen signing off, and thanks for joining us today.
We good?